Hey people, okay, I'm going to make a quick screencast on how to make a simple iOS app that does a table view displaying rows of information. It's probably useful for people who are starting out iPhone programming and new to iPhone programming but have got some kind of background in understanding the memory management and basic principles of Objective-C programming, but they're still just unsure on how to do interface programming on the iPhone. So I'm going to open Xcode. I'm going to make a new project. It's going to be a view-based app. Alright, so I'm going to dive into the view controller. So one of the things Apple provide us is a UITableView controller. And when I started iPhone programming, one of the things I first looked at was the table view controller, because that seemed the most obvious thing to use when doing stuff with table views. But it turns out it's probably not the best thing to do, because a table view controller is really inflexible. It doesn't give you probably what you're really looking for, which is a solution to display lots of things, not just a table view, but maybe buttons on your screen, a navigation bar, toolbars, all of that. You need to use something else, and so a better way is to actually use a UI view controller, and in addition use one of Objective-C's design patterns, which is the delegation. So we're going to implement the UITableView delegate and the UITableView data source. And what this bit of code here means to Objective-C really is that our class, the TableView app test view controller, implements the UITableView delegate and data source messages. And in Xcode it's really nice, but I can right click and jump to definition, and this will take me right into the header file, which are all publicly available, of the class of the UITableView, and it can show me the messages for the TableView delegate. And I can see here that the protocol for the TableView delegate is actually completely optional. So none of these things I have to implement unless I wish to. Let's have a look at the TableView data source. And we can see some of them are required and most of them are optional. So at the moment I'm just going to implement the two required ones. I'm going to jump to my implementation. I'm just going to remove some of the stuff which we don't really need. Cool. And you can actually see already that Xcode is complaining to me, saying that I haven't implemented the protocol. So that's a nice warning, but that should go away very shortly. It's also going to throw up another warning saying that I haven't implemented the methods. So the two required things I need to do in this instance is tell my table view how many rows in each section it should have, and I should also return a table view cell for a row at an index path. So a couple of things to explain, but a table view is divided into sections, and each section has a number of rows. So let's just return 1000. So that just tells the table view to return 1000 rows for each section. And by default, the table view will only have one section, although you can specify that in the data source. And the second part is to return a table view cell. Now, when most iOS programmers start out, because they may come from a background of either web development or application development, the hardware is obviously a lot quicker. But on a phone we have very restricted hardware requirements. So Apple has designed application design patterns which we can use to help speed up our apps so they're quicker on the phone. And it's important to use these, because if we don't, then the application will be really slow and not a very good user experience. So I'm just going to demonstrate one of the most important parts of table view programming, and that's using the DQ and the reusable cells. So let me just write a bit of code here, and I'll explain. Right, so I haven't implemented this fully, but I just want to do it line by line. And this line of code here, it asks the table view to DQ a cell with an identifier, which is a string. And this table view cell can either be nil or an object. And nil means that no object was returned. So in the case of no object being returned, what that means is the table view doesn't have any cells which can be reusable at that point with the identifier. So we should allocate a new table view cell. And this is the most expensive CPU-wise and memory-wise operation that we can do with our table view cell, table view. So we want to reduce it as much as possible, and this is why we're using DQ. So what I've done here is I've made a new table view cell, and I've given it a style. So table views come with a number of styles. You can press escape and it will show you some of the styles, but the default one gives us quite a lot of functionality. And I've also given it an identifier, and this should be the same identifier which we are DQing with, so I've called it identifier. And I've also auto-released the object I've just allocated. So what that means is I no longer have ownership of that object, which is right, because this view controller itself doesn't need to have ownership of the cell. It's actually the table view which will have ownership of the cell. If I didn't have this line here, I'd have a memory leak, so it's important to have that. And then after that point, we are free to do whatever we like with the cell. So this may involve configuring it somehow, and I tend to write another method here to do the configuration of the TableView cell. And it's common for Objective-C programmers to write their methods very well in the style of obviously camel case, so lowercase followed by uppercase for each word, and write it so each parameter, configure cell, for index path, much like that, because that's probably the most readable way of having messages, which is quite unique for Objective-C, like that. You'll get brownie points for other Objective-C programmers if you write your messages like this. So cell, let's just set. So this is just setting the text of the TableView cell to Hello World, which is our first step. Well, it may not be your first step, but it's my first step for a screencast. Yeah, okay, so really that's all we need to do to have a basic table view, and all what's left now is to connect it up with Interface Builder. That's not required because we could do it completely in code, but it's probably a bit more friendly for people starting out to do it in Interface Builder, so I'm going to do it like that. Okay, so what I've done is I've declared an iVar, and this iVar is available throughout the class, and I've also made a property, and it's got an IB outlet, which makes it available in Interface Builder for me to connect any Interface Builder objects to my class. And I should probably also make sure I don't have a memory leak, so self-set table view. So that clears out our table view when it's deallocated. And now in the Interface Builder project, I right click on the file zoner, which is the view controller, connect the table view. It's already got the view connected, so that's fine. And then I right click on the table view and connect it to the file zoner, which is the view controller, and connect the data source and delegate, which our table view responds to. And click save. Now when I build and run the project in the simulator, we've got, oops, I think I may have done something wrong. Oh, oops, the final thing, which is off. Here we go. So we've got 1,000 lines of Hello World scrolling nice and quickly. Just one word of caution, simulator never runs at native speed. So although this might scroll really nicely on the simulator, test it on hardware, because if you've got complicated things going on, it might not run as quickly as the simulator does. Definitely worth buying a developer license. Alright, okay, until next time, thanks a lot.